I'd like to begin with giving a shout out to Trainer Jax, who continues to act as a powerful inspiration for the topic of this little ramble, and another shout out to Karmacorn, formerly known as Panda Bearing, with best wishes. What does it say about one's worldview when one fabricates a context in order to implicate others in perceived immorality and blame them for becoming implicated? An accusation happens when one's fault to follow a moral or ethical code causes enough concern to make known to others both the fault and the perpetrator. There's a seemingly infinite number of things a person can be accused of as long as somebody finds a moral or ethical fault in their actions. There always remains the question of how truthful the perception of fault is, but depending on the gravity of the accusation, the questioning diminishes, proportionally to the weight of the fault in question. That's because, while perception is subjective, the classification of immorality is codified. Whoever is familiar with the phrase "hate speech is an act of violence" knows the disconnect being discussed here. And when that disconnect is used in a social environment to disseminate a damning perception of somebody to make others replicate an accusation, we are dealing with unlawful defamation. Truthful or not, it continues to affect the accused person with little regard to what their defense might be, because the perception of their actions has already been provided, or in other words, the social judgment has been passed. What motivates someone to make an accusation in the first place? In an ideal world, incriminating deeds would be self-evident. In reality, self-evident malice almost does not exist. One generally takes action to benefit some sort of a goal, although it's a whole other conversation on whether the goal is altruistic or exclusively self-serving. The goal of accusing, however, is essentially the same regardless of motive: to see the accused undergo punishment, which takes many forms like public shaming, social ostracism resulting from it, ruined reputation, and possibly even retaliation from a third party. Question of substance for punishment remains. Despite the blame being already placed, however, the question of substance for punishment remains. One of the claims thrown around to punish somebody for some sort of offense, misdemeanor, or just for the thrill of seeing them writhe under the weight of social judgment, and remarkably hard to escape at that, is the accusation of immoral sexual practice, where the apex offense one could be accused of is pedophilia, in which case somebody making a mere remark could face the moral ostracism by someone projecting sexual context on that remark. It can turn out to be a misunderstanding, easily remedied by a simple contradiction of the accusation provided the accuser's goodwill. But it's hard to see goodwill in somebody repeating the accusation and relaying it to others for extended amount of time, based on something they saw as sexual in nature, without accounting for any sort of confirmation from the one they accuse. Denials are outright discredited by the circular logic blame game. It's particularly damning when the accusation comes from the alleged victim themselves. This is an instance where mere accusation is substance enough to discredit anyone's questioning, particularly the alleged victimizers. And as the ostracism escalates, potential defense dwindles for the fear of being ostracized as apologetics for a gross immorality. I'd like to propose an exercise for such events to perhaps prevent you from hounding somebody in some sort of a witch hunt in the future. Ask yourself, where does the sexual context appear first in a given scenario? And how does it prove anything about the allegation beyond the allegation itself being made? Food for thought. I also postulate that nobody should call somebody a pedophile based merely on what one deems sexual themselves, or about themselves. Law being law, the motivation of somebody setting oneself up in a category of a victimized child, while simultaneously carrying oneself in a flirtatious and borderline sexual manner, comes off as ridiculously contradictory to the accusation. Age of consent playing no part in that behavior, other than to implicate somebody for sadistic lols and out of spite. Pedophilia is a serious enough matter for any sane person to withhold judgment of somebody until there's evidence for them having the disorder, and particularly acting on it anywhere beyond somebody's opinion. other than vapid talk of an attention seeker. When you think of the children next time, try not attributing sexuality where it doesn't belong. If you can't help it, please check yourself. I am done reasoning.